I'm Laura Carlson, and I'll be your host as we look at cutting-edge issues with the men and women who know them best, here on Telesur. Mexico's justice system is notoriously broken, and especially for the most vulnerable sectors who face discrimination on top of the general obstacles. One woman stood up to those odds, and after 16 years of fighting, she won. A historical sentence was handed down in the case of Valentina Rosedo. We're very honored to have Valentina in the studio with us today. Valentina, thanks so much for being here with us in Interviews from Mexico.
No, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm here to tell my story after many long years of struggle.
Valentina, I know that this is a story, a painful story that you've told many, many times. And I'd like to ask you if you could tell our audience what happened in the year 2002 that led to filing these charges.
On February 16, 2002, it was in the Montaña region by a stream where I was washing clothes. Some soldiers passed by there, and two of them raped me. Back then, I didn't speak Spanish. I spoke in my language, Mefa. And after I was attacked, I was able to escape from them, from the soldiers who had attacked me. When I got back to my house, I was practically naked. I told my sister-in-law what had happened, and then the people from the community organized a meeting, and we decided that we were going to report it.
Was it a difficult decision to decide to formally charge the members of the army who raped you? Was there a lot at risk there?
Yes, there was, especially because I went down. After what happened to me, I went to a community health center. I walked for almost 3 hours to get there. The doctor there just gave me pills for the pain, but he didn't check me because he told me he didn't want trouble with the military. And I told him what had happened to me, and we went to the town of Ayutla de los Libres. It took us a long time to get there. We walked for almost 8 hours.
In the state of Guerrero.
Yes, in Guerrero. I walked for 8 hours carrying my 3-month-old daughter. At that time, my oldest daughter, Jenny, was 3 months old. So when we got there, we went to the police station, and I told them what had happened to me. They didn't provide me with a translator, even though they knew that I didn't speak Spanish. I was speaking in Mepa. And what they did, they made fun of me. And from that point on, they didn't care. They didn't listen to anything I told them.
So they really couldn't even understand what you were saying, and they didn't bother to understand it. They hardly even took the report when you went to the police with this?
Well, they did take that report, but they acted as it was a joke. And after that, after I filed that report, a lot of soldiers started to come to my community, and they offered me money to drop the charge, to stop saying that they had attacked me. And my community supported me at first, but later, when more soldiers started to come to the community, the major held a meeting, and he told the people from my community to stop supporting me, or else the local government would cut off support for the community. From that point on, I was labeled as a woman who'd been raped, a woman who no longer has value to the community. So I had to leave. I had to leave the place where I was born, the place I grew up, and I went to the capital of Guerrero. I went there without knowing anyone, and I didn't even speak Spanish well. I had no choice but to leave because the people in my community didn't care about me anymore, because they blamed me for the fact that the local government was cutting off support.
So not only were you in a situation of being the victim, but you were facing the stigma within the community and threats for having denounced the crime, and you were actually forced to flee to the capital of the state. What did you do when you got there?
Well, I made contact with the Tlachinolan Human Rights Center, and they helped me file a complaint. They believed me. And then, further on, some other organizations got involved, and they've helped me too. So, there in Guerrero, in the capital, I had to work 2 shifts to be able to survive and to support my daughter, because after what had happened to me, my husband left me. He left us, me and my daughter. She was 2 years old when he left. He said he couldn't, that he couldn't deal with being with a woman who was assaulted. And that was very, well, it was very sad for me, because after what had happened to me, after I left my community, well, I had no other choice but to stay in Chilpancingo, the capital, to keep working to provide a better life for my daughter, and to keep raising my voice about what had happened to me, until my case was taken to the Inter-American Human Rights Commission. That's where I got the chance to tell my story, to be listened to. And again, the government said that I was saying that what I was saying had happened to me wasn't true, that I was lying because I wanted to get the military out of my community.
The Mexican government never brought the case to justice, and so you were forced to take it to the Inter-American Commission, and they continued to deny it, saying that you were lying because you were just trying to get rid of the army from your community?
Esto mero, güey. Sí, con ayuda de otras
Yes,
organizaciones.
that's right.
Porque aquí
With the help of other organizations in Ayutla, in Chilpancingo, here in Mexico City, no, the government never investigated. They always called us lying women. They said that we just wanted money, and they said that we wanted the military out of our community because we grow opium poppies. That's what they said. So, no, it was never like that. From the very beginning, I said that even with my testimony, with all the evidence that there was against my attackers, the government still didn't carry out an investigation. When I went to the Inter-American Human Rights Commission, the government said it was going to investigate. I identified my attackers in photographs, but even then, the government just kept threatening us. They tried to take my daughter from her school, and my lawyers were also threatened. And after all of that, what the government did was to send me to a psychologist who asked me to tell her about what had happened to me. The psychologist, I met with the psychologist, and what she said, the first thing she said to me was, "Is it true that really happened to you?" She said, "Is it true that happened to you, or are you lying?" Instead of giving me support with what had happened to me, that's what she asked me, asking me if I was lying.
She doubted you.
That's right. And after many years, with the help of other organizations, my case got to the court, and I was able to confront the government again. And I told the story of what had happened to me.
In the Mexican court or the Inter-American court?
It was a commission, no, the Inter-American Human Rights Court.
Now we have this historic sentence. Tell us about the sentence, moving to the victory that you finally had in this long, drawn-out, and terrible experience.
Sí, no, pues no fue fácil.
Yes,
Pues
well,
casi
it
media
wasn't
vida
easy. I spent almost
de
half a life
lucha,
struggling against all the
pues
obstacles that the
trabas lo que
government put
puso
in
el
my way.
gobierno. Por fin pues salió mi verdad,
And finally, my
salió,
truth came out.
por fin triunfó mi
Finally,
palabra, me pa
my word was
como
victorious,
indígena allá de la montaña.
spoken in Mepa
Por
as
fin
an
también
indigenous
voy
woman
a,
from the Montaña region.
pues esta
For
lucha
me
pues
too,
significa mucho
this
para mí
struggle means a lot to me
y para
and
la
to the
gente de
people
mi
from my
comunidad,
community.
de que
It
todos
means
ellos,
that
todos
everyone who
aquellos
called me a
que
lying
me
woman,
dijeron
who
mujer
called me
mentirosa,
promiscuous
mujer
with the
de
military,
militares, por
finally,
fin pues ya
justice has
se
been
hizo
done.
justicia
And
y
the
están
soldiers who
pues
attacked me
castigados a los
are being
militares que me
punished.
agredieron. Por fin aquí en México
Finally,
pues
here in Mexico,
se
people
conoce
know
pues
that women like me
de
also
que
have the
mujeres
right
como
to
yo también
justice
tenemos derecho
after
de tener
so many years.
justicia a
And it
pesar
doesn't
de
have to
muchos
be like
años
this.
y no tiene
I
que
think
ser
that we
así,
need to
tiene que
believe
ser.
women who
Yo
have been
digo
attacked like
que
this,
se tiene
and the
que
government
querer
shouldn't
a
put
las
so many
mujeres pues que
obstacles in
son
front of
agredidas
us.
así y no tiene que el gobierno poner muchas trabas y también como mujeres que no hablan en
And also
español,
for
que hablan
women
una
who don't
lengua
speak
como yo,
Spanish,
que
who
si
speak
tiene
another
que poner
language,
una
they need to provide a
traductora
woman
y
translator
también
and a woman
una
doctor to
médica que
check them
revisen que sí
and
es
prove that
cierto
they're
lo que
telling the
les pasa
truth.
pues.
Congratulations, first of all, for your courage and for your persistence in this. And as you say, it's not just a victory for you, but for your community and for so many Indigenous women to see this as an example and to stand up and demand justice even when it's so very difficult. What exactly does the sentence say?
Pues dice que pues
It
ya
says
salió
that
que
it has been
pues se le
formally
dan
issued.
a
It
19
says that the
años
soldiers will go to prison for
de
19 years.
de sentencia
And yes,
a los
also after
mis
They cut
agresores
it took
a la
many
cárcel
years, as you said,
y
it wasn't
pues
just
eso
1 or
pues
2 years,
también
it was
pues
17
después
years.
de años pues no
I had
como
to
se
learn
dice no
Spanish
es
to
no
be
es
able to raise my
ni
voice
ni un año, no es ni 2 años, son
so that my
16 años.
voice would be
Yo tuve que
valued as
aprender
an
español
indigenous woman.
para alzar mi voz, para que mi voz valiera pues como mujer indígena. Y
And
eso
that,
para mí
for me, was a
significa
big
mucho
commitment.
también
There are
una
also
reparación por
reparations
parte de
for
mi
me and my
familia
family
también porque
because I
pues
left my
dejé mi
family to
familia
seek
para buscar
justice and
justicia
I left the place where I
y
grew
dejé
up.
donde yo crecí
And now I'm here,
y ahorita
raising my
estoy aquí
voice,
pues
like
alzando mi voz
always.
como
I have
siempre
spoken the
he
truth,
dicho la
and
verdad
that creates
para
hope for my
eso es
people, for
una
many
base
women who are still
para
stuck in
mucha
processes of
gente, para muchas
investigation
mujeres
like mine,
que todavía están
like
en
friends,
proceso de
like my friend
investigación
Inez,
como mi
who is
compañera
still
Inés
fighting
que
because the
todavía
government
le
doesn't
falta
want to
pues el gobierno
investigate.
no se apura de investigar
So the sentence in my
y eso
case
también
could
pues va
help
a
her.
ayudar mucho.
So we have reparations for the family and for all that you had to go through, and a sentence of 19 years for 2 members of the Army.
Ujú. Sí, así es.
Yes, that's
How
right.
do you see this setting a precedent for other cases that are similar, both a legal precedent and a moral precedent within the society?
Sí, porque pues ningún caso
Yes, because many
donde
times soldiers
cometen
commit
atrocidades como
atrocities
militares
and
no
it's
se
not
ha investigado, pues
investigated.
nomás
It
queda
just
ahí
gets swept
archivado
under the rug.
y
And now
eso es
people
lo
are going
que
to hear
pues,
about
se
what happened in
conoce
my
hoy en mi
case
caso pues
here in Mexico
aquí en
and in other
México,
countries.
en otros países
And that's going
y
to
eso
help
pues
push
va a
the
ayudar a
government to
empujar
say,
pues como
we
que
have to
pues
investigate.
el gobierno
We have
decirle
to
pues hay que
arrest those
investigar,
responsible.
hay que agarrar los responsables. Hay muchas compañeras que
There are
han
many
sido
women
violadas
who have been raped.
y no
And
pues
well,
algunos
some of
denunciaron,
them reported what
algunos no
happened to them,
denunciaron,
and some of them didn't report it.
pues siguen
But
ahí
they're
pues
still
en la
fighting for
lucha
justice.
de muchos
And they have
años
been
también
fighting for many
y
years.
que
And my
eso
case can
pues
be
que
an
sirva
example
pues
for other
también de
women,
ejemplo
that they
de
can
que
raise their voices,
a
that the struggle
otras
for justice needs to
compañeras
continue.
para portar voz para que pues la lucha pues de buscar justicia tiene que seguir.
Without a doubt. You've talked about how this was your decision, it was your persistence that finally achieved this sentence, but that you had also a lot of help along the way. What kind of organizations were critical to achieving this legal victory?
Pues la organización
The
que
main
me ha
organization
acompañado,
that has helped me is the
el Centro
Tlachinolan
PRO,
Human Rights
CEGIL,
Center.
y otras
Also the
organizaciones
Pro-Human
otros
Rights
compañeros
Center,
que me han
the
cobijado
Center for Justice
para
and
seguir
International
empujando
Law,
porque no
and other
fue yo
organizations,
sí
other many
yo pues
people who have
enfrente
supported me so that I could
de
keep pushing.
portar voz
I
y
was
decir
there at
lo
the
que me había
forefront leading it
ocurrido,
all,
pero
but I was
también
surrounded by
a
all
mi
of these
alrededor están unas
organizations who were
organizaciones que me
supporting
han
me.
ayudado.
And we should tell the audience that the Tlachinolan Human Rights Center is located in the state of Guerrero, a state where some of the most dire human rights violations take place, and it's been fighting this case with Valentina for many, many years now. So it's really a shared victory in many ways. Of course, you've had to have legal support. Did you have to learn laws and learn how to fight in a courtroom, which is quite different from, I'm sure, experiences of it you've had in the past?
Pues sí, tuve que pues a entender lo que
Yes,
lo
of
que de la
course.
sentencia,
Well, I had to learn to
ahí de viajar
understand
a otros
all this about
lugares
sentencing.
y sí,
I
pues
had to
una
travel through
experiencia
other
pues
places,
triste a la
and
vez,
yes,
pero
it was
pues
an
una experiencia
experience
que siempre
that
va
was
a
sad,
quedar en mi
but at the
corazón
same time, it
y
was an experience that will
se puede
always
pues
be in my heart. And
ahí
now I can
pues
hold it in
tener
a document, a book,
un
that
documento,
shows
un
that my
libro
struggle
donde
brought
el
the case
caso
to the
pues se
point
llevó hasta
where I
allá
won,
y la
and the
lucha
court
pues,
handed down a guilty sentence.
pues de ganar esta sentencia.
That other people can point to and say, here's someone who stood up and actually won, we can too.
Sí, eso mero.
That's very important. You faced a lot of barriers, a lot of obstacles along the way that had to do with rejection from the community, with rejection from the government itself, not just rejection, but threats along the way, with attempts to buy you off, you know, the many, many moments in which you could have given up. What was it that kept you going during those moments?
Pues después de lo que me había ocurrido a mí,
Well, after what happened to me, I went back
regresé
about
como 3
3
años
years
después a mi
later to my
comunidad.
community.
Pues las mujeres
And the women, the older
pues me
women,
contaban que
they told me
también
that they
las
had also
señoras,
been raped by
me
soldiers,
contaron
but that
que
they never
también
reported
habían
it.
sufrido
They
de
said
violación por
that
parte de
thanks
los
to me,
militares,
thanks
pero
to
que
my
ellas nunca
voice,
denunciaron.
which
Y
traveled
ellas me
so
decían
far
que pues,
searching for
gracias a mí, gracias
justice,
a mi voz que llevó
and me,
tan
just
lejos
a
para
child,
buscar justicia,
barely
y se murió
17
una
years
niña
old.
que apenas tenía pues 17 años.
17 years old when it happened.
Y ellas pues ya son señoras grandes, ya con
And these
familia,
women who
y
were
eso
talking
por
to me were
vergüenza
older
no
women
denunciaron.
with
Pues eso es
families,
lo que
and out of shame they never
pues me
reported
motivó a
what had
seguir
happened to
también
them.
adelante
That's
con mi
what
lucha,
motivated me
y
to
también
continue
pues
struggling.
a mi hija pues,
And my daughter also
pues
motivates
con
me
ella pues
because we suffered together along
sufrimos en
this
el
path.
camino,
And when I look at her, I
porque
think
pues
about
veo en ella
how I
pues de
don't
que
want what
pues,
happened to
no
me
me
to happen to
gustaría
her.
que también sucediera como lo que me pasó a mí. Y ahora soy mamá de cuatro
Now I have 4
niñas
children,
y
3
por ellas
daughters,
y por
and I
otras
fight for
mujeres
them
que
and for
han
other
sido
women who have
violadas.
been raped.
It's ironic, it's terrible really, that the women should be made to feel ashamed when they're the ones who've been attacked, and it should be the criminals who are ashamed. What do you think accounts for this type of violence against women in communities, and especially from forces that are supposed to be enforcing the law? That's supposedly why the army is in the communities. How can you explain that?
Sí, pues que lo que hace el gobierno es
Yes,
mandar
well,
a los
what the
militares
government does is
a
to
violar
send
a las
soldiers
mujeres
to
en la
rape
montaña
women
en
in the
lugar
Montaña region.
pues,
Instead of
darnos
providing
seguridad.
security for us.
No, pues no
No,
hace eso el gobierno.
the government
Pues
does not
hace,
do that.
pues, se
They take
apoderan
advantage of us
porque no hay un
because
castigo
there's no
para ellos,
punishment for them.
por eso hace
That's why they do
esas
these
cosas,
things.
pues.
If
Si
the
el
government
gobierno
were to work
pone
on talking to their
de su
people and
trabajo,
not
pone,
allow the military to
a-
talk however they
pues
want to in the streets
hablar
and all of that,
con
well,
su
no.
gente
What they
y
do
no
is
dejar a los militares que
they grab
hagan como
women.
quieran en las calles y todo eso. Agarran pues a las mujeres.
In my
y
community,
allá
when
en
the
mi pueblo,
soldiers
pues, cuando
come,
suben
all
los
of the women
militares, todas
hide
las mujeres se
in their
encierran,
houses.
todos los
All
niños
of the
ya
children
no
don't
van a
go
la
to school.
escuela,
Even the sheriff
hasta los
doesn't respect
comisarios no
them
las
because when
respetan,
they
porque
come,
cuando
they bring
llegan ahí
weapons,
llegan con
and that
armas y
scares
eso
people.
le dan miedo, pues.
Of course. You mentioned that the government knows about that this is happening with soldiers, and with security forces in the countryside, do you think that they're purposely giving them permission in some way to abuse women, to commit violence against women?
Sí, pues eso pues
Yes,
los
well,
manda
the government
el
sends the
gobierno, pues,
soldiers,
y,
and
y ellos pues
they do whatever they want.
hacen como
Why?
ellos quieren,
Because,
¿por qué?
like I was
Porque
saying,
pues
there's
como
no, they don't get
les
punished
digo que no
when
pues
they
no hay
omit crimes like
no
this.
hay
There's no punishment for them,
no se castigan pues
and that's
cuando cometen
why they
así
do whatever they want.
no hay un
They
castigo
act
para ellos,
however they want
por
to,
eso hacen
because they
andan
feel
como ellos
powerful.
quieren, hacen como ellos
And
quieren,
even more
se
so
sienten
when,
poderosos, se
for
sienten
example, when I see
y
that
más
if
aún
you have
cuando,
money,
por
well,
ejemplo,
it's easy
cuando
to
yo
get
veo pues
punishment for the guilt.
que cuando
But when you
tienes
have
dinero
nothing,
pues
and
fácil
even more so, when you're an
se
indigenous
castiga a
woman,
los responsables
the
y
government
así,
doesn't care
pero
about
cuando no
you.
tiene nada y más aún cuando somos
They don't
mujeres
pay
indígenas
attention
y
to
no
you.
pues
That's
nos
how the government
desprecian, no
is.
nos hace caso, así es el gobierno.
Much of it has to do with the defenselessness of poor women, of indigenous women in this society, and the fact that there are no consequences for men who commit these acts then. You also mentioned that one of the reasons that you carried out this case, that you went forward with this case, is to provide an example and to try to prevent this from happening for younger generations. What does your eldest daughter think of your struggle and what's happened now with achieving the sentence?
Pues ella está muy contenta porque pues terminamos
Well,
una
she's
etapa
very
de
happy
búsqueda de justicia
because we've
y
ended
ahora
a
que ya
long
están
period
los
of pursuing
responsables
justice,
detenidos
and the people who
y
did
ya
it are in
cerramos
jail. And we've closed a
un vínculo
chapter
pues
of
que
that
nos
has been part of
llevamos
our
ya
lives
16
for
años
16
cargando
years.
pues
We've
de
had to
lucha
struggle. We had to
de
move
cambiar de
several
casa,
times,
cambiar de
move
todo.
around.
Ahora pues que ya
Now
pues
we
ese
have
tiempo
this victory with the
de la
sentence. We're
sentencia
more
pues ya
relaxed.
estamos más
We,
pues
we're ready to
tranquilas,
move
estamos
forward.
pues pues de seguir adelante pues.
Have there been any threats of retaliation?
Ahorita estamos más tranquilas,
Recently it's
pero
been
pues
calm, but who knows
quién
what is
sabe
going
qué
to
va a pasar,
happen
porque
because
el
the
gobierno
government
siempre
always has
no
surprises
tiene
for us.
sorpresa por ahí.
You've faced a lot of persecution in the past. As you look back on this experience, which in many ways is just opening up another chapter, what do you think are the major lessons that you've learned along the way? If other women were to ask you, how can I denounce this violence? How can we stop this violence in our community? What would you tell them?
Pues les puede decir pues que tienen
Well, I
que
would tell them
tener
that
esperanza,
they have to have
tienen
hope,
que
that they have to raise their
pues,
voices,
alzar la voz
and that it's not easy.
y pues no es fácil.
Sometimes
Pues
you feel
hay
despair and like you
desesperación a
just
veces
giving up,
pues
even though you've come all
tirar
this
la
way.
carga que hemos llevado
But you have to
y-
continue.
y
You
pues
have
hay
to go
que-
on.
hay que
And I
seguir,
tell the
pues, hay
women
que
who are in
seguir
this path that they have to
eso,
hug
pues,
each other
como les digo
and that they need to
a
keep
las
their
mujeres
spirits
que
up
encuentren
because
el
that also
camino,
helps a lot.
pues abrazar, ánimo, que eso también ayuda mucho y que pues que
And
la
that
vida,
life,
pues,
you
hay
have to
que
continue no
seguir
matter what.
como sea,
You
hay
have to
que
keep
seguir
pursuing
buscando
justice
justicia
until
hasta
you
que
get it,
un
like I
día
finally got
se
it.
encuentre como yo encontré.
And this has been such a long process. How have you changed personally?
Cuando pues los militares me agredieron, yo pues me
When
partieron
the
la
soldiers
mitad.
attacked me, they
Una
split me in
Valentina se
two.
quedó en su pueblo,
One
la otra
Valentina stayed in her
Valentina quedó
community,
buscar,
and the
salió a
other
buscar
Valentina left to
justicia,
pursue
aprendió español,
justice.
otra
She
Valentina
learned
pues se quedó
Spanish.
ahí en su pueblo,
The
cuidando a
other
su mamá, a
Valentina
su
stayed there
familia,
in her hometown,
y ya cuando fue
taking
el
care of her
reconocimiento
mother and her
público, ahí
family.
me volví a reunir
And when I got
conmigo
the public
misma,
recognition,
y,
I was able
y
to
ahí
become one
donde yo
again,
pues,
to get back together with
pues una
myself.
parte de mí que
And there is
pues
part of me
que
that
se
has learned to become someone
puso
and get ahead in
sobresalir
life because I
en la
learned a
vida,
lot.
porque pues aprendí mucho.
I learned
Aprendí
to speak Spanish. I
pues,
went back to school,
español, volví a regresar
and
escuela,
I now have
pues ya
4
soy
children.
mamá de
And well,
4
yes,
hijos,
I've changed.
y
I've learned how to
pues
defend my
sí, ha
rights,
cambiado,
how to keep raising
ha
my
cambiado
voice
mi vida
with
también,
other women.
de aprender a cómo defender mis derechos,
All those things
cómo
I've learned
seguir alzando la
have
voz
also
por
changed
otras
my life,
mujeres,
learning
y-
not to
y-
be
y
ashamed
eso
about what
yo he
happened to me.
aprendido también,
because before I felt
pues,
guilty, I felt afraid.
de no
But
tener
thanks to
vergüenza, pues, de lo
Tlachinolan,
que me había
I
ocurrido,
found
porque
a
antes, pues, yo sentía
psychologist who has helped me
yo
move
sentía
forward.
pues miedo. Pues gracias ahí a Tlachinola encontré una psicóloga que me ha ayudado también a salir adelante.
Do you feel in some way like the two Valentinas came back together, were reunited? Does that make you doubly strong?
Sí.
Yes, yes.
What's next?
Pues sigue portando voz.
Well, I'm going to continue to speak out,
Pues acompañar a las
supporting the
mujeres
other
que
women who are
también
still on the
todavía,
very long path
pues,
towards
camino
justice.
muy largo para caminar
I will be there
y
for
ahí,
them
pues,
when I
voy a
can,
estar
for whatever they need.
se requiere cuando se puede.
You said that there are other women in your own community that have suffered the same. Are you beginning to see more organization of women to stand up and denounce this kind of thing and to find a way out of this situation?
Sí, en mi pueblo ha cambiado, ha cambiado para bien.
Yes,
Ya las
in my
mujeres
community, it
participan
has
más
changed.
en
It has
asambleas,
changed for the
ya,
better.
pues, ya no
Women
hay más,
participate more in,
ya no hay mucho,
in assemblies now.
Violencia
There isn't as
familiar,
much domestic violence
y,
anymore.
pues sí han entrado también, pues creer que también las mujeres tenemos derechos.
That's a huge change, and you've undoubtedly been a big part of it. Valentina Rosendo, thanks for being with us.
No, al contrario, gracias a ustedes por acompañar.
No, thanks to you for
por-
supporting me,
ahora sí, portar
for
mi
letting me
voz
tell
que
my
me
story
van a
to so
escuchar
many
y
people.
eso
That has
también, pues, ha
also been a
ayudado
huge
mucho
help for me
de
to keep
seguir.
going. So
Y
thank you very
para mí, pues,
much.
muchas gracias. De
Thanks
corazón.
so much. And thank you. We'll be back next week on Interviews from Mexico.